So I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar. Good evening for some, good morning for others. Confidence, building it and communicating it. I wanted to set the context by starting with a story really, which gets to the nub of this evening's webinar. Team GB at the Rio Olympics had one particularly successful outfit, and that was our GB women's hockey team. Now they won gold at Rio, despite, as they would readily admit, playing against a team who were far superior technically than they were, and that was the Netherlands. Now, some of you may have heard Karen Brown's webinar, which she delivered a few months ago on the FCN. It was a fantastic insight into what went into the success that the GB women had at Rio. But a couple of things came out really strongly in terms of what drove their success. One of those was their strength as a team. Yeah, they weren't technically the best, but as a team, as a unit, they were incredibly strong. And within that, their strength as individuals. Now, as a business, we know a couple of the players. And I was chatting to one the other week, and she explained a process that all the players had gone through. And I thought it was fascinating. So each player went through a process where they stood up in front of the rest of the squad. And they said, this is me, and this is what I bring to the squad. This is what I bring technically. This is what I bring tactically, and this is what I bring person. These are my strengths. And I thought that's a really good illustration of being able to feel confident and communicate with confidence, which is really the nub of this evening's, this morning for some of you, webinar. Vicky's very kindly introduced me and the business. Just to reiterate, I'm a keen sports player. I played both tennis and hockey to representative level. First qualification was as a tennis coach, and have continued doing a bit of part-time tennis coaching whilst doing other things. I'm also a mum to 3 very sporty boys who play all sorts of different sports. Sport and Beyond, we're a training and consulting business with a focus on driving high performance. We have quite a strong female narrative going through our business. For example, we run female initiatives and programs for international law firms. We work with organisations like BT, through to charities like Women in Sport, and obviously female coaches. And what's fascinating for us is how strong the link is between issues that women might face in business and issues that women might face in coaching. In both worlds, there's a huge focus at the moment on barriers to progression. Not barriers to entry so much now, for the most part, not exclusively obviously, but for the most part, that sort of challenge has been met. Barriers to progression. So what is it that's stopping women progress and fulfill their potential as they should be doing? Well, for each sector and within that each specialist area, so for example within business, you've got entrepreneurs, bankers, lawyers, etc. They'll all have their own issues and challenges. But a common factor which comes up time and again, not just in research, but the insight that we get is around confidence. Yeah, the common factor between both sectors. And I'm passionate about this, fortunate to have had a good career. I'm a fairly confident person. But even for me, I've built up a huge amount of confidence over the last few years with some of the things I'm going to be talking about this evening. Just in terms of format, Vicky said, obviously, lots of questions I'm really happy to take at the end. I'm actually going to be asking you some questions as we go along as well. It's obviously a bit difficult to make it interactive with it being a webinar, but I want to try and make sure that I get some input from you guys and kind of keep it live rather than me just speaking into my screen. So what would be fantastic is when I do ask questions, if people could type their answers into the chat box, I'd really, really appreciate it. Okay. Vicky, if you could go to the next slide for me, because I think, are you in charge of it or can I? Oh, I can do it, so that's perfect. Right, that's nice and easy. Oh, okay, we've both done it. I'll go, yeah, lovely, thank you. I'll let you do it then. So aim really tonight is to highlight the link between confidence and coaching, introduce you to some simple strategies to build and communicate your confidence, and then to enable you to see how you can put them into practice. There's obviously only so much that I can do in an hour's webinar. So for those of you who are UK based or for whom it's easy to travel over here, we are going to be holding a one-day workshop on the 6th of September in Milton Keynes at the National Badminton Centre, which really gives a lot more meat on the bones in terms of the sort of things that I'm going to be talking about this evening. Vicky has produced a save the date flyer, which hopefully we'll be able to show you later, and we'll be taking bookings, I think, in due course. So do note that down, and you'll be getting some material through from it again as well, but it's the 6th of September in Milton Keynes. And we'd love to see as many of you there as possible, obviously. Right, time for you guys to do some work. A couple of questions for you. The first one I'm going to ask you, why do you think, oh, thank you, Vicky, that's brilliant. Why do you think it's important to be confident as a coach? So have a think to yourself, and then if you could type answers in. So why is it important to have confidence as a coach? I'll give you a couple of minutes and we'll see what answers we start getting. So your players believe in what you're coaching them. So your athletes can feel confident about their own ability. Fantastic. Buy-in from players, good. Athletes need to see this to help with their confidence, but also be honest. Yeah. So you believe in what you're coaching. Some brilliant answers. Thank you, guys. Gives the athlete a sense that there's a solid plan. Yeah, I like that a lot. Definitely around that, giving the athletes that confidence that you know what you're doing. Developing the coach-athlete relationship. Yeah, I think that's a good point on it as well. What else are we going to have coming in? Confidence comes through into your own coaching, and participants respect that. Absolutely. Anyone else want to contribute, or is that pretty much covered the main areas? Pauline develops the leadership. Brilliant. Thank you. Really, really important that. And obviously, there's a lot of leadership involved in coaching, something I'll be coming on to. All right, that's brilliant. Thanks, guys. Started off really well. You've set a really good tone, so I really appreciate it. Another question for you before I go on and do a bit more talking. What I'd like you to do now is to think to yourself, try and identify someone who you know who radiates that confidence in a positive way, not in an arrogant way, but radiates confidence in a positive way. And if maybe you could think and then just quickly share the name of the person and why you think they're able to do that and the impact that it has. So the name, why you think they're able to radiate that confidence and the impact that it has. Now, it could be somebody from personal life, it could be a fellow coach, you know, from professional life, whatever, but somebody who you think really radiates that confidence. Slightly longer question, but hopefully we'll be able to get some answers on that. Okay, so Nikki's picked up the person she's thinking of. The impact of them radiating that confidence is that she trusts them. That's brilliant. Okay, lots of you typing, so that's fantastic. We'll just wait and see what gems you're going to come up with. Yeah, Pauline saying that always seems to have, the person you've chosen always seems to have a sensible answer. Okay, good. A skill which many of us would love to have. Okay, Di Murray, Tony Minicello, obviously Jess Ennis-Hill's coach. Trust from athletes and the coaching team around him. So that's why he radiates that confidence, and the impact is that everyone moves forward. That's brilliant, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to know that he was an example on the Female Coaching Network webinar, so fantastic. Katie, the impact for her, the person she's chosen, is that you want to be on board with their plans. Adriana, Tiffany, head coach, mentor, it's about her experience, and it means that you trust and believe in her. Brilliant. Denise talks about Jennifer Gray, synchro swim coach. It's her technical knowledge and experience, that's interesting, but also empathy, something really important. Obviously, we've talked before about emotional intelligence in the previous webinar, etc. Carol's got Peter Teagan, a former track coach, very knowledgeable, so confidence, you're saying sort of radiating confidence comes from that knowledge, and he has that positive impact. Pauline, you feel safe in their company. Katie, okay, good, not a sport one, MD at work, has the content and the history of success to back it up, and the gravitas to hold a group and get results. Lee has shared her person, which is Tamsin Greenaway, netball coach, ex-player. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder if that's what you're saying, that's what gives her the confidence. Her athletes believe in her and she empowers them. That's fantastic, guys. Really, really, we've got a good shout. And then I'll just pick up on Emma's as well. Emma's got Graham Hall, head coach at Game, experience again, allows them to be, that experience, that confidence, allowing them to be adaptable to the situations and understand the children that you coach and work with. Fabulous. Right, guys, that's brilliant. I'm going to stop you there. Couldn't have asked for more, so thank you. Vicky, if you could move on to the next slide, and really this encapsulates what you've been talking about there. I can see Nicole's just picked up on Richard Cheetham, who I know, ability to know that person, but also knowledge, fantastic. I don't know how well you can read this, but this is a quote that Vicky's picked up on previous sort of things going on in the FCN from a track and field coach called Marilyn Okoro. My number one piece of advice would be to be confident in your roles, your role and your abilities. You are a coach for a reason, above all. You've chosen to do it. When you have confidence, your athlete will have confidence. And that sums up a lot of the things that you've been talking about. So that's brilliant. Looking at it the other way, we've probably all had experiences where we have been taught, coached, led by somebody who doesn't exhibit confidence. And we can all think of the impact that that has. I went to an all-girls school and we were merciless with any new, young, inexperienced teachers who didn't know what they were doing. They generally had left a few weeks down the line. We were horrible, but they didn't exhibit and sort of exude that confidence, and it enabled us to be so. We didn't trust them. We didn't believe in them. Yeah, you probably all have got similar situations, hopefully not possibly to that extent, but where you have had the opposite of being taught, coached, led by someone who exhibits confidence. And in a sporting context, it's vital at all levels, from grassroots through to high performance. And I'm sure those of you on the webinar, we've got a good cross-section of the levels at which you coach, and it's vital at all levels. Okay, the work begins. Let's start looking at the meat. Vicky, if you could go on to the next slide for me again, that would be great. Before you look at those quotes, just a point, and I'll be reiterating this throughout this evening's webinar, which is that confidence needs to be built on solid foundations. It's not, you can't build confidence by someone saying you're great, you're wonderful. You've got to believe in it yourself and understand why. Why is it that you should be feeling confident? And what's the cornerstone of that? Well, for us, it's around self-awareness and understanding. So you'll see the two quotes there, quotes we use a lot in what we do. Before you can be someone, you need to know who you are. It's by a chap called Robert Dilts. And that second one, only by knowing yourself can you become an effective leader. It's from Vince Lombardi. Many of you will have heard of Vince Lombardi, head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Some of you might say, well, hang on a minute, that's a leader. What's that got to do with coaching? But as I alluded to earlier, and one of you did in your answers, think about your position as a coach and how you are leading the groups of people that you're working with. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do to yourselves this time, don't worry about putting it in the chat box, but I'll just give you, a minute or so to think about it. Think about what are the 3 greatest strengths that you bring to your role as coach. Yeah, so what are your 3 greatest strengths as a coach? And I'll just give you a minute or so to think about what those are to yourself. Okay, now for some of you, I suspect that may have been an easier process than for others. Research has shown that women in particular can find it difficult to recognise their strengths and then to articulate them. This is something that we ask people to do often in one of our programmes that's focused around confidence. Oh, my screen's a bit, there we go. And what we tend to find, we've got to be careful of generalisations, but we tend to find if we ask that question in a room which is male dominated, the answers come out pretty quickly. But if we ask that question to a room which is exclusively female, women can find it harder. Oh, well, I'm not very good at this and I'm not very good at that. Right, that's not what we asked. What we asked was, what are your strengths? So that recognising and being able to articulate your strengths can be a challenge. I hope it's something that you were all able to do. Those of you who haven't had time to think it through properly, do ask yourself that question at the end of the webinar as well. Now, I talked about the one-day program, the conference that we'll be running in September, and this is just a sort of insight really in this webinar. But what I'm going to do is share some insight now in terms of how through that day and the process we go through, we can help you to really, really understand and articulate what your strengths are. So I'm going to ask Vicky to move to the next slide. And I hope you can see that clearly enough. We use a behavioural profile. The behavioural profile comes from an Thomas International. Oh, that's brilliant, Vicky, thank you. It's British Psychological Society registered. It's very robust. It takes 8 minutes to do online. Now, before I go into any detail on it, just not everybody I know is comfortable with doing psychometric testing, assessments, behavioural profiles. I referred earlier on to the fact that I was a corporate lawyer for 13 years, quite cynical, and so you can imagine my initial views around this kind of thing. But I can very firmly say that in all my years of working across, law, education, sport, this is the most useful tool that I have used anywhere, and that our clients find the same thing, which is why we continue to use it in lots of our programs. So it's just a little sort of insight into it this evening. But the assessment that we use is based on something called the DISC model. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just a little bit of background. So it's based on the DISC model, which looks at behavioural patterns and divides them into 4 quadrants. And this is very much about how you operate at work. It's not a personality assessment. And you'll see that you've got 4 letters, D, I, S, and C. So D stands for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for compliance. Now, you'll see that in each of those quadrants, there's a set of words above the line and a set of words below the line. Now, really, really conscious not to put people in a box, so absolutely not what we're aiming to do. But what I'd like to ask you all to do is just to take a minute or so to look at this slide and work out that in each of those areas, dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance, which of those 2 sets of words in that particular column most sounds like you? So you'll see that for dominance, you've got 1 set of words that reads assertive, competitive, etc. And then another set of words below that middle line that reads accommodating, hesitant, etc. So for each of those columns, I'll just give you a few seconds to look through and think, well, I wonder which of those sound most like me. Okay. Now, some of you might have done it quite quickly. You might have been able to look at those words and straight away say, yeah, I'm da, 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 da. Others of you might have found it, a bit more complicated and might still be trying to work it out. Catherine, why have I started to speak? I'm still looking through, in which case, apologies. So some of you, as I said, for some of you, it might be very clear, some of you not quite so. That's absolutely fine, not to worry about that at all. And I'll come on in a second to the point behind doing this. But just to give you an indication, for me, my profile is influence and dominance above the line and steadiness and compliance below. So the sets of words that tend to sit with me are the ones starting communicative, friendly, influential, etc. The dominance words above the line, so assertive, competitive, direct. And then for steadiness, it's the ones below the line, active, alert, demonstrative, as you can see, mobile and restless. And for compliance, again, it's the ones below the line, firm, independent, persistent, strong-willed, and stubborn. But we say that one quietly. Okay. Vicky, if you could go to the next slide, please, that would be great. So just to really enforce, I've given you something you've just had literally a snapshot, obviously a taster of. But what's the point about going through an exercise like that? Well, I've mentioned before about how confidence has to be built on solid foundations. It has to be concrete. It can't just be built on someone telling you you're wonderful. Okay. You need to understand what it is about you that makes you special, that makes you different from other people and makes you stand out. Okay? So for me, Vicky, if it's possible, can you go back to the previous slide? Apologies for being a pain. Oh, fantastic, good. So for me, let's just take the set of words sitting under influence that relate to me. So communicative, friendly, influential, networker, persuasive, positive, verbal. As a coach, that says certain things about me, that I'm likely to operate in a certain way. I'm likely to be, persuasive, positive, and quite chatty in my coaching, and quite influential. I'm probably like to be a good motivator. Take me out of coaching into a different sphere. If you said to me, Catherine, there's a room full of people next door, you've never met any of them, but I'd like you to go in and talk to them, I'll be happy as Larry. In fact, I'll be really excited. For me, that's as easy as breathing. So I probably won't even recognize that that's a strength. But for other people, that could be the thing that they would most want to avoid in the world. So it's about understanding that we all operate in different ways and we all have different strengths and recognizing those strengths. If you could go back, Vicky, to the next slide, that would be great. Now, athletes, especially elite athletes, are generally very good at recognizing their strengths and then the next stage in building confidence, which is leveraging those. So depending on the age of all of you listening, some of you may remember Martina Navratilova. Okay, very, very good tennis player. Now, grew up in Eastern Europe and she defected to the West. And once she got over her, there's McDonald's everywhere and I can eat lots of junk food, she sat down and thought, you know what, I want to improve as a tennis player. What are my natural strengths? And she realised that she was more naturally athletic and strong than most of the other female tennis players on the circuit. So what does she do? She focused on leveraging those strengths, building up her fitness and her strength. She put herself through a regime that no woman had ever put themselves through before on the female circuit. As a result, she became incredibly successful and actually transformed the whole, really, female tennis circuit. Daley Thompson is another classic example. Again, that era. I will use the modern one in a minute. But Daley Thompson, some of you may remember Daley Thompson, he was a decathlete. Okay, so he was a British athlete and he did the decathlon. Determined to win a second gold at the 1984 LA Olympics and being chased hard by his rival, a chap called Jürgen Hinsman, he went to a world-renowned coach and said, there's one event I'm weak at, which is the 1500 metres, and I want you to help me get better at the 1500 metres. And the coach turned around and said, no. Oh, sorry. And I've just seen there's a question, can you be in more than one box? I'll pick up on that one at the end if that's okay. All right, brilliant. Sorry. So he said to the coach, can you help me get better at the 1500? And the coach said, no, I won't. But what I will do is I'll make you so strong at the other 9 events that actually the 1500 metres will be irrelevant. And that's exactly what happened. Daley Thompson did win gold again at the 1984 Olympics. And when he stood on the start line of the 1500 metres, which was the last event, he'd already won. All he had to do was to complete the race. Didn't matter where he came, and he'd already won. So I will bring up a new modern one. Again, I'm afraid it's British, but Joe Root, who's England cricket captain, he had a dramatic rate of improvement about 2 years ago over a 12-month period. And speaking about at that time, he referred to the approach taken by Peter Moores, who was his coach at the time. He said, Peter definitely got the best out of me, along with the rest of the coaching team. When I came back from Australia, I realised that a lot of the time I was trying to work on things I was not good at, putting all my energy into that rather than spending more time strengthening the stuff I'm good at. Okay. Peter Drucker, who's a renowned management consultant, educator and author, has said we should waste as little effort as possible on improving areas of low competence. Okay? Because actually you can get from low competence to mediocrity, but that takes a lot of hard work and effort. How about focusing on the areas that you're already really strong at and moving up to that area of excellence? Okay? So it's about recognizing your strengths and it's about building those. Now, I'm not going to ignore key limiters because some of you might be thinking, well, that's all very well, but there are some things that I'm pretty rubbish at, and actually as a coach, it's really important that I work on those. I'm not going to ignore those. I'm going to come on to those if that's okay. So, talked about recognizing your strengths. We've talked about leveraging those. And I want to pick up on a couple of mindset concepts, the way that you approach things that can really help to build the confidence around that. The first one is growth mindset, and the second one relates to stretch and flow. Now, just as a very, very quick gauge, how many of you have come across the concept growth mindset? We just pop yes into the box, that would be fantastic. Okay. This is like the boarding thing. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Right. So I'm sensing that everybody's come across growth mindset, and that's brilliant. And I'm not surprised, because obviously it's a key thing in sport at the moment, as well as in business, as well as in education, obviously. Just for those of you who may be less familiar, maybe just as a recap, I'll sort of introduce it in a certain way. But first of all, like any sort of big concept, it has faced some criticism. Growth mindset as a concept has been misapplied, it's been misinterpreted in various sectors. So for some people, the words growth mindset don't necessarily have the positive sort of vibe that they once did. We still talk about it in the work that we do, because at its essence, at its core, it's still an incredibly powerful concept and something that we think is really, really important for building confidence. So the way that I tend to introduce it is at the most basic level, to really get to the nub of what it is. Don't worry about typing in the chat box, but imagine that you're in front of me and I'm going to say, right, how many of you can walk? Okay. And how many of you were born able to walk? And the answer there is probably going to be none of you. So how did you learn? Okay. And you'll hopefully be thinking, well, I pulled myself up on a chair leg, I fell over, I hurt myself, I got up, I tried again, etc. Same with riding a bike. So how many of you can ride a bike? A push bike, that is, rather than a motorbike. And again, that same question, how many of you were born able to ride a bicycle? And so how did you learn? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who had quite a painful process learning to ride a bike. Okay, but that's how we went about it. We couldn't do it to start with, but we worked hard, we kept going, we persisted, we learned from when things didn't go well, and that's how we improved and got better. Okay, same for you as coaches. How many of you were born perfect coaches? Okay, if you were, congratulations, but I'm anticipating that not many people will be saying yes there. So how have you and how are you improving? It's hard work, isn't it? It's effort, it's trying things. Yeah, it's persisting, it's learning from when things don't go well. Okay. Vicky, if you want to go on to the next slide for me, that would be fantastic. Just so context, there's a blank slide there. I was going to show a short video, but it won't work on the webinar, but not to worry. It was really, really short, and it's not going to take away from what we're talking about. That's why there's a blank slide. So really, and the original research that Carol Dweck carried out, and she was the really author of the concepts fixed mindset and growth mindset, is absolutely fascinating. Anyone who's not aware of the original research, do go back and look at it, because it's incredibly powerful in terms of the impact that mindset can have, not just in terms of the way that you approach things, but actually performance. And that was an original experiment done with 400 high school kids in the States. Really, the nub is our abilities are not fixed or set in stone. They can be cultivated and developed, as I said, through hard work, effort, persistence, etc. What's the relevance then, again, for you as coaches? Okay. The first thing we would say, and as I've talked about already a little bit, is to focus on your strengths. By doing so, you can much more quickly improve your confidence and your performance. I've talked about how if you focus on the things that you're already good at and put the focus and effort into improving those, you're going to move to excellent much more quickly, and that's going to really, really help build your confidence. Okay, take a growth mindset to trying to develop those areas. Push yourself, work hard, get yourself out of your comfort zone, which I'll come on to, and make sure that when things don't go right, frame it in the right way. Well, okay, it wasn't a perfect result, but what did I take from that? What did I learn? What did I develop as a result? So if you run a session where things don't go perfectly, yeah, put yourself in a situation where you're really challenging yourself to run a particular coaching session. What did I learn from that? What can I take from that? And that attitude can be absolutely key in terms of developing your abilities in a confident way. But we also all have things that we can't do. Yeah. Now we can spend a lot of time worrying about those. But for me, it makes a lot more sense to focus on what we call your key limiters. Are there one or two things which actually have a big impact on your coaching ability? Things that you're not so strong at, that have an impact on your sessions, yeah, and the output that you get for your students? And if so, should you be working on those? Okay, so for me, well, I won't go back to the slide, but some of the issues around where I sit on the PPA profile suggest that I'm probably not as methodical and thorough as I should be, and maybe not as sort of systematic and logical. So whilst as a coach, I'm great at the kind of, oh, isn't that a great day? I'm looking forward to coaching you guys and making sure that everyone's happy and involved, etc., etc. I'm not so strong at planning. I'm not so strong at following through on a plan and maybe doing things in a logical and systematic way. And that's important for coaching. So it's really useful for me to know, well, actually, that's probably a couple of key areas where I need to work hard, okay? I'm also often so busy doing so many things that I can be not brilliant at listening. And certainly in a business context, that's something I've had to work hard at improving. So it's about understanding your strengths, leveraging those strengths, understanding the areas that you're not so good at, but taking that growth mindset approach to improving, developing, and building those areas. Don't expect miracles. Things aren't going to happen overnight, but you can improve. And I got a great example of this, giving a presentation around a high-performing mindset to a group of bankers up in Scotland. And the head guy came afterwards and sat me down and, you know, was very kind about my presentation and said, do you know what, Catherine, it's like me in the 100 metres. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I could probably run 100 metres in, I don't know, 14 seconds. It doesn't matter how hard I work, I'm never going to be as fast as Usain Bolt. So I could take a growth mindset approach and I'm never going to be as fast as Usain Bolt. But I could get a lot quicker than I am now. So I could probably get down to 12 seconds by working hard. If it's something I wanted to do and it's something I felt I needed to do, I'm not going to expect miracles overnight, but I'm going to work hard. Okay. Mentioned, I'm keeping an eye on the time, so I'm just going to quickly talk about stretch and flow before giving you a couple of communication tools. Is everybody okay? I know I'm chatting a lot at the moment. I hope everyone's okay. Maybe just a quick something into the box to say, yes, you're still there, you're still listening, and etc. Fabulous, good. I'm glad that you're all there. That's fantastic. Okay, so stretch. Oh, sorry. One thing. A couple of quotes before I move on from some great female athletes. So Johanna Konta. Some of you may have heard of Johanna Konta. She's a British tennis player. She's had the fastest rise up the WTA rankings of any tennis player. And she said this recently: the thing I love about being a professional tennis player is that I get the chance to work hard every day in pursuit of getting better. What a fabulous growth mindset approach. I'll leave you actually with just that one. So the second concept I want to talk about in terms of that mindset to help you build your confidence is something called stretch and flow. Bit of background. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, it's taken me a long time to learn how to say that name, is a Hungarian psychologist. Now, when he was 10 years old, he caught the last train across the Danube River out of Hungary. And he was crouched on, and he caught the train with his mother and his two brothers and sister. And he was crouched on the floor, hiding from the bullets and the bombs going on in the distance and whatever else. And he lay there and thought to himself, adults really don't know how to live. And at that moment, he decided to devote his life to the pursuit of excellence. And he came up with the concept of stretch and flow. Now, have any of you ever been in a situation where you've been completely absorbed in what you're doing, to the extent that you look up and think, goodness, where did the time go? Yeah, I've been so absorbed, I can't believe that much time has flown by. Now, it could have been when you were, at work, when you were coaching, when you were playing, doing another hobby, playing some music. So athletes call it being in the groove. Sorry, musicians call it being in the groove. Athletes being in the zone. Psychologists call it being in a state of flow. And that state is where your level of skill and ability exactly matches the level of challenge that you're working on, to the extent that you're fully absorbed. I've also heard it referred to as a Goldilocks task, which I love. So something which is neither too difficult nor too easy. If you're working on something that's too easy, you can go into your boredom zone. And if it's ridiculously easy, you can move into disengage, which obviously is not where you want to be. More excitingly, above that state of flow, what's the state that sits above that? Stretch, where you're stretching yourself beyond your existing level of skill and capability, trying to deliver on a challenge which is really pushing you out of your comfort zone. Okay. Now, how often do you think you do that? Straw poll, quick question. In the space of, so we're now what, Wednesday evening. So since Monday, how many times do you think you have pushed yourself out of your comfort zone? And if you could type in the chat box, that would be fantastic. Okay, Di's put 3, fantastic. Carol's put twice. Denise, once. Nikki, not enough, 1. Emma, go ape. You did go ape, actually. Gosh, Lee once, Louise once, Adriana 2. Okay, rolls twice. Okay, even that process of thinking about how often you've done that is going to be invaluable. But hang on a minute, girls. Should we be aiming for more than that? Yeah. 1 in 3 days, is that enough? Should you be pushing yourself more? Yeah. How about twice a day? How about even more than that? Okay. The thing about doing it, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, is it doesn't always work. If you push it, Adriana, whenever you can, fantastic. If you push yourself too far, you go into what psychologists call the stress zone, which actually isn't helpful either, because you're trying to do something which is so far beyond your current level of skill and ability that actually it's kind of self-defeating and will knock your confidence. But bring it back to the stretch zone. The more time you spend pushing yourself into the stretch zone, the more you're actually growing your comfort zone. Not even that, but actually you're getting comfortable and familiar with pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So even if you try and do something that doesn't work, or that doesn't work brilliantly, and you wish you could have gone better, you're giving yourself experience of being in that zone, and you're going to learn so much from that. Compare that to someone who never pushes themselves out of their comfort zone and never gains the knowledge that you can and sort of experience and confidence that you will get each time you push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I'm going to share a quote here from Mia Hamm, one of the greatest female soccer players. She's from the States. And she said, "All my life I've been playing up, meaning I've challenged myself with players older, bigger, more skillful, more experienced, in short, better than me. Each day I attempted to play up to their level, and I was improving faster than I ever dreamed possible." Another way of putting it, which I love, if you don't expand, you contract. So recognizing your strengths, leveraging them, taking a growth mindset approach to your improvement and development as a coach, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, all key factors that are really going to help you build that concrete confidence. Just going to spend the last 5 minutes or so before we move on to questions, looking at a couple of key communication tools that, very short, really simple, but can have a massive impact in the way that you sort of exude your confidence, communicate your confidence, because it's not just about feeling confident, but as we picked up on at the beginning, and you guys did with some brilliant answers, how you communicate that confidence. Okay, Vicky, if you could go on to the next slide, that would be great. I'm going to teach you all to be trilingual in about 2 minutes. Who'd have thought it? Okay, when we communicate with someone else, there are 3 channels through which we can communicate. Have a think what you believe those might be and pop them in the chat box if you want to put 1, 2, 3, whatever. So what channels do you think we use to communicate with other people? Okay, sight, body language, hearing, listen, observe, speech, body language come up again, brilliant. Verbal, non-verbal, and listening. Okay, brilliant. Verbal, non-verbal, absolutely listening, but I want you to think of one other that's about how we communicate actively to other people. So we've got verbal, non-verbal, which is sort of body language and that kind of thing. There's one other, because I could speak like this, or I could speak like this. What's the brilliant? Louisa's got it, Katie's got it, Lee's got it, fantastic. Tone. So 3 channels of communication, okay, verbals, non-verbals, and tone. Now, psychologists have shown that in situations of mixed messages, in other words, if my tone is giving out a different message from what I'm saying, which itself is giving out a different message from my non-verbals, my body language, each of these have different weights. One of them carries a weight of 55%, one of them carries a weight of 38%, and one carries a weight of 7%. Who's going to be brave and guess which one carries which weight? So we've got verbals, non-verbals, and tone. We've got 55, 38, and 7%. Okay, verbal 7. Fantastic. Katie and Pauline, you've got that one right. That's brilliant. What about the non-verbals? 55, body language. You lot are too good, meaning that we're left with, let's see what's going to come there. I can see that lots of people are typing, but nothing's coming up. But essentially, it's the one left. So 38% for tone. So that's fantastic. And what that is telling us is it's really important to be aware of what you're saying when you're not actually saying it. Okay, I could be saying something quite negative, but with really, really positive body language. And actually, that's quite a good thing because it's my body language which is going to be the thing that they listen to. Similarly, I could be saying something really positive. So imagine I'm coaching someone, I'm saying something really positive, but my body language is negative and my tone is quite flat and negative. That's the message they're going to get, not the words I'm saying. So when you're thinking about communicating in a confident way, think about your body language. Think about your stance. Yeah. Think about body language, eye contact. Are you moving around? Are you using your hands a lot, etc. And think about your tone. Tone is absolutely key. 38% in that situation of mixed messages, but really important in how you're getting your messages across and communicating in a confident way. Last quick tool, just going to give you an insight into it here without too much of the background, but when I'm talking to you, as I've been doing for a long time, and you've all been listening, I know, brilliantly, but how long do you think I actually had your full attention for when I started off? So started off the webinar, you know, kind of 45, 50 minutes ago. How long do you think I had your absolute full attention? Okay, Emma's put 20 minutes. Brilliant. Vicky's not listening because she's moved on to the next slide. The whole time, of course, from Vicky. That's fantastic. 3 seconds is what I've been told. Okay, so we've gone from 45 minutes, 20, 35, 3 seconds, 15 minutes. Okay, so really, really good answers. I'll just see there's a couple more that might come out. 25 minutes. Okay. Well, you're all very kind and you're all wildly optimistic, apart from Di. Research has shown it's actually 7 to 10 seconds. 7 to 10 seconds that I get your full attention. Yeah, wow. Now, it's important to be clear. It doesn't mean that after that you're not listening to me. It doesn't mean, good old Rich Sheeton, that's very, yeah, okay. Oh, thank you. And that's, so Nicole's written the whole time because of your tone engaging, and that's something that I do on purpose because, I know about this. So thank you, that's great to hear. But yeah, I have your full attention for about 7 to 10 seconds. And as I said, it doesn't mean after that you're not listening. What tends to happen is that your brain starts tuning out, okay? Making connections. So you could be making connections to things I'm saying. Talked about me having played tennis and hockey, that could make you think about, oh, I wish I still played hockey, or, you know, whatever connection you might make to what I'm saying. You might also be thinking about something that's entirely unrelated to what I'm saying. Got to pick the kids up, got to take the dog for a walk, whatever. Now, it's not surprising this, because whilst even those of us who talk quite quickly can say maybe 200 words a minute, our brains can process words at around 900 words a minute. Okay? So what happens is that we tend to have two conversations going on at the same time in our heads. What we're listening to, sort of what we're hearing someone else say to us, but also listening to what's going on in our head. Now, there's all sorts of stuff that comes from this around listening and speaking, but there's one particular thing I want to highlight here, which is a concept called headlining. And again, it's really important in terms of you communicating in a confident way to the people that you're coaching and working with. Okay? Because the way we tend to communicate often is that, say we've got a point to raise, we tend to start with background and then give the idea. So, classic example, it's a Saturday morning, my husband comes downstairs and I go, oh, Gary, you know, it's a really, really sunny day today, it's great. The boys are all busy, they're out playing sport, whatever. Forecast is really, really good. We haven't got much on. Would you mow the lawn? Okay. Now, the problem with the way I've approached that, if you flag up that 7 to 10 seconds, is that by the time I've asked him to mow the lawn, he's not listening. Or at least he's not listening perfectly to me. So headlining is a technique where we switch round the way that we say things. Start with the idea, start with the concept, and then give the background afterwards. So think about when you're coaching, your half-time talk, your talk at the end of a training session, your talk at the end of a game. They're not going to be listening for the whole time that you're speaking. Okay? Now the curve works so it comes back up. So you get your 7 to 10 seconds, it goes down, it comes back up. And there are things that you can do like tone, etc., to try and sort of short circuit the time that they're slightly switched off. But it's a really important thing to be aware of. You might have a brilliant talk, you know, ready to give to the people you're coaching, but they're not going to listen at the same level throughout all of it. So think about headlining what you want to say to be able to communicate in a really confident way. Okay, I think that's probably all I wanted to share. So Vicky, if you want to go on to the last slide for me, just to say thank you so much, all of you, for listening. And I'm so pleased with all the answers you gave. I didn't know it was, to be honest, but you've all been fantastic. So thank you. Those of you who can make it on the 6th of September, really looking forward to seeing you there. And we've got a few minutes left for questions. So if anyone wants to pop any questions into the chat box, please do so now. Thank you, Nikki. That's very kind of you. Great. I think we've got a couple coming in from the looks of it. Do you want to, Vicky, do you want to get that save the date JPEG up while they're doing that? Because, yeah, fantastic. So that's just a little bit more information about the session we're running on the 6th. We've got Gail Ems, MBE, badminton player, as guest speaker and coach as well. So we're really looking forward to that day, and we really hope that as many of you can come as possible. Good. Pauline, yeah, it's a really good question. So what we talk about here is linked very much to, you know, positive psychology. Broaden and build comes out of that. So there are links. I don't know enough about that in detail to give you a sort of full answer here, but there definitely are links. And if it's something that you want to sort of pursue offline, really, really happy to sort of investigate that with you. Emma, any idea of times for the 6th? Not definite times, but it will probably be around something like 9:30 to 4:30. But we will be confirming, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks. Denise, Carol and Denise, that's brilliant. Oh, Vicky, you've answered that one for me, so thank you. Pauline, will it be repeated anywhere else? Yeah, so it's a relatively new course for us. We've piloted it already. And we are looking to roll it out, you know, more widely. So provided we can sort of gain momentum around it, we'll definitely be looking to, you know, hopefully run this. Really, we want to we're on a mission with this to try and really help female coaches with this course. We know the impact it can make, so absolutely we're hoping to repeat it, probably hopefully through the FCN as well in other places, so sort of keep in contact. Di, is it only for females? Really good question. Yes, it is. We do a lot of programs that are not female only, but again, our research shows that for programs like this, having a room that's only got women is fantastic in terms of a more open, supportive environment. Women engage more quickly, feel more comfortable more quickly. So for this particular course, it is just for women. We do run coaching courses for men, in particular our emotional intelligence course, very popular with men actually as well. Denise, that's hilarious. How do you juggle a family of 3 children and a husband who can't cut the grass and your work? My husband is very good at cutting the grass, and my boys have learned as well because they get pocket money through doing it. That's very funny, thank you. And great, Adriana, sorry if I've said that incorrectly. I'm really glad that you like that if you don't expand, you contract. It's something that I always have in my head as well. Okay. I don't know, it looks like there may be a couple more questions. Lee, really pleased to hear about the headlining. It is fantastic. You've got to practice, yeah? So it's not something that will happen overnight. Think about what you want to say, restructure it so you make sure you're headlining, and just practice over and over and over again. If it doesn't work the first few times, don't worry, just keep going. Yep, take that growth mindset, keep going. But good, I'm really pleased. Okay. And thanks, Di, for reinforcing that. Communication styles tip has made me recognise my 3rd coaching strength. That's brilliant. And actually, it's a good point. So for those of you, obviously, some of you, it's the start of your day, others, it's the end of your day. Do have a think. Again, that question I asked you at the beginning about 3 greatest strengths, do have a think about that. Emma Harvey, do you think a coach education program can really benefit coaches' confidence? I only asked because I write a dissertation on this and I didn't get the results I wanted. So on that, I've got to be careful, and I think so much of coach education programs are incredibly beneficial. Where I think, though, something like this can make a difference is it's about you as an individual. It's not generic, but it's really helping you to understand yourself as an individual and what your strengths are. And I think, to me, as I said at the beginning, that's where confidence really comes from. So I think there's probably some fantastic coach education programs out there, but for us in our business, this is a really key way to build confidence. What on mentoring? Yes, I think mentoring can be very effective, provided the framework of the mentoring relationship is set out clearly. I think it's very important that the mentee drives it, because that also helps to build confidence, and that the match is right. Lee, I think coaches learn more once they start coaching and working with other coaches. Totally agree with that. My experience training to be a lawyer was that I spent 2 years basically sitting in offices with partners, so people who were very well qualified lawyers. I went to meetings with them, I listened to them on the phone, I did everything with them, apart from probably going to the loo with them. And I learned so much from observing them, so absolutely. Yeah. I think that's probably it, if that's okay.